Hey YouTube, Common Collector here, and today I am bringing you guys my Mutant deck profile budget variant. So I am really sorry that I have not gotten this deck profile out faster. I was really hoping to get this out at some point after Phantom Rage came out, but other deck profiles just sort of took priority. But anyways, Mutants is a very fun deck. It goes along with a really cool theme. Kind of reminds me of like X-Men just because of like, obviously because they're called mutants. And then also they have like all the test tubes and stuff. So basically, like the theme of the deck is that these are like sort of like special powered beings in these test tubes, and then they evolve into the bigger monsters, and then also the bigger monsters are kind of blended into the fusions, which sort of harness all of the special abilities of the like main deck boss monsters, which is really cool. So it's almost like if in like the X-Men movie, like when they're trying to like make the perfect superhero and whatnot. So yeah, overall Mutants is really cool. It has a really interesting play style and sort of deals a lot with monsters, spells, and traps in interacting with certain cards. So anyways, this is going to be the budget variant. It sits around like $80, give or take, depending on what you guys already have. But yeah, if you guys are starting from fresh, this is between an $80 to $100 deck, which is very affordable, and it's a lot of fun. So anyways, we're going to get on here for the deck profile. Don't forget to subscribe if you guys haven't already, and like the video. So we are going to be playing 3 copies of Myutant M05. So this is your main monster searcher of the deck. So when this card is normal or special summoned, you can search and add 1 mutant monster from your deck to your hand. And then this card, along with your other searcher, which is Mutant ST46. Both of these cards contribute themselves, and then you send 1 card from your hand or field to the graveyard to special summon 1 of the mutant boss monsters from the deck. So depending on what you send, so again, like I said, this deck just really specially interacts with monsters, spells, and traps. So with either of these guys, when you tribute them and then you say you send a monster, then you special summon the mutant beast. And then if you tribute a trap, you get Mutant Arsenal. And if you tribute a spell, then you get a Mutant Mist. So overall, it's really fun. And also just like another little Easter egg with these guys, and like just a simple way to remember is that the M for M05 stands for monster, so this card searches your monsters, and then the ST46 searches your spells and traps, so that's why it says ST. So these are your 2 main searchers for the deck. So then we're going to go on into our 3 copies of Mutant Beast. You want to play this at least 2 copies, but I like it more comfortable at 3. So the reason why you want this is because he is the best one. So I'm just going to flush out all of the boss monsters. So we're playing 2 copies of Arsenal and then our 1 copy of Mist. So just keep that in mind. We're going 3, 2, and 1 for the Mist. So these guys are really cool the way that they interact with the monster, spells, and traps theme. So we have our Mutant Beast, and so with Beast, he cannot be targeted by your opponent's monster effects. And then also, if your opponent activates a spell card or effect, you can, as a quick effect, banish 1 card from your hand or field to negate the activation. So he negates spells and is cannot be targeted by monsters. Then also, when he gets destroyed by an opponent's card, you can target 1 of your traps and then add it back to your hand. So all 3 of these guys have a very similar first and third effect. So Beast cannot be targeted by monsters and gets you back a trap when he's destroyed. With Arsenal, Arsenal cannot be targeted by traps and then gets you a banished mutant spell back to your hand. And then with your Mist, it cannot be targeted by your spell cards or by your opponent's spell cards. And then also when it is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you target 1 of your banished mutant monsters and add it back to your hand, which is really cool, just like to make sure that you get the correct monster on board depending on what your opponent's deck is. You can sort of tailor your strategy. So then with your Arsenal, his second effect is a little bit different than the Beast. So with him, when your opponent activates a monster effect as a quick effect, banish 1 card from your hand or field, and then target a monster on the field and banish it. So he does not negate, he just banishes a monster whenever a monster effect gets activated. And then your Mist, which is arguably your worst one, that's why we're only playing it at 1. when your opponent activates a trap card as a quick effect, then you can banish one card from your hand or field and then just draw 2 cards. So overall, it's not that great because like if your opponent is using infinite impermanence or something on a really good monster of yours, using Mist to just draw 2 cards doesn't really help you, but it's just nice to have as an option in the deck, especially if your opponent is playing a spell-heavy deck. So that's going to do it for all of our main deck boss monsters. So now we're going to get on into the hand traps. So we have our 3 copies of Dimension Shifter. This card just shuts down a lot of great decks. This is sort of an anti-meta deck right now, especially if you can tailor your main deck and side deck properly. So overall, yeah, the Dimension Shifter is just super great for knocking out all of your opponent's big plays. Then we have our standard 3 copies of Ash. This is the most expensive card in the deck. So I sort of assume at this point that everybody basically has Ash Blossoms, and I believe it's getting another reprint in the upcoming Ghost from the Past series. So we should all be able to play Ash Blossom with really no excuse at this point. And for a control deck, you just kind of need it. So now let's move on into the spells. So first of all, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Mutant Evolution Lab. This is our field spell for the deck. It's a pretty good field spell. It's not as good as like some of the other ones that you can get for a lot of archetypes, but it sort of does the job that you need. So when this card's activated, you can special summon one of your level 4 or lower mutants that's either in your hand or banished face up. So this is just a really nice way to sort of extend on your plays, especially if you can get off your Mutant Fusion spell card, which is going to banish one of your mutants, or if you can just use any of your lower level of the mutants and use the one guy to banish the other, which is basically going to allow you to you use one tribute, tribute itself, banish the other copy, and then when that one gets banished, then you can special summon it back with your Evolution Lab, and then get off that monster's effect. So it's just sort of the struggle of getting the other monster actually on the board. Then also all of your mutants gain 100 attack for each of your banished mutant cards with different names. And then just another effect that's really, really nice with this is that once per turn, you can shuffle back a mutant card from your mutant monster, from your hand and put it to the bottom of your deck and then draw a card, which is just really nice because sometimes with the big boss monsters, your hands will sometimes get a little bit cloggy. So sometimes it's nice to just shuffle back a beast and put it back into the deck. And then there's just a myriad of ways that you can sort of get them back out of the deck. And so just sometimes getting that nice draw off is just super, super good. Then we're going to go on into just 2 copies of our Mutant Fusion. I still like this at 2 because it's really great just for in your opening hand if your opponent makes you go second. This is a sort of trap heavy deck, so we still want to be playing a few of the spell card to make sure that if we do go second, that we have our options. So with this, it's just basically your generic fusion summon card for mutants. However, what it does is that you have to special summon a mutant off with this card, and then use cards from your hand or field as normal. However, if your opponent activated a effect during your turn, then you can use this to you use materials from your deck as well as your graveyard, 1 from each, which is really, really cool. So you basically have 4 options. You have your hand, graveyard, field, and your deck all as resources for your fusion summon, which is really cool. Then we're going on into our 1 copy of Terraforming, 1 copy of Called by the Grave, because we got to make sure that we're getting our searches off, because otherwise sometimes you'll just end up with one of your low level guys on the board, and then they only have 0 and like 500 for their stats. So you really want to make sure that your searches are always going off. 1 copy of Dimensional Fissure, which is super great for just shutting down other decks. And we do not care about our cards getting banished because of this card right here, which is our best trap card of the deck, which is a Mutant Cry. So basically Mutant Cry works like Mutant Fusion. However, you can use your materials that are in your graveyard as well as banished. So that is really important. So basically no matter what happens with like these guys, any of your mutants, your low levels or your high levels, whatever of your stuff that you're banishing, it does not matter because your Mutant Cry just shuffles back any of the materials from your graveyard or your banish pile, puts them back into the deck, and then it gets you out your fusion monster, which is really great for your Ultimus because it requires 3 level 8s, so just keep that in mind. Then we have our 3 copies of Mutant Expansion, which is your continuous trap of the deck. Basically, this card can just search out any of your level 4 or lower mutants and special summon it, or add it to the hand, which just gets you off that extra search during your opponent's turn, and then also it can save your mutants from getting destroyed. So if a level 8 or higher mutant monster is getting destroyed, then you can just send this to the graveyard, or sorry, you banish this instead of that card getting destroyed. We have 2 copies of Dogmatica Punishment. If you can afford stuff like Infinite Impermanence, or if you just want to add like an extra draw engine to this deck, you can definitely get rid of like the Punishment or any of the other cards that you don't like in this deck. We have 2 copies of Trap Trick, which just helps you to get into your Cry, as well as your Dogmatica Punishment easier. So yeah, Trap Trick, super good because you always want to see that Mutant Cry. Then our 3 copies of There Can Be Only One. This is just really great for this deck. It hardly ever really stops you, but it is just such a great floodgate. And then for our final floodgate is going to be 1 copy of Macrocosmos. Works basically the same way as your Dimensional Fissure. I believe I put that over here. But yeah, your Dimensional Fissure and your Macrocosmos can just really flamboozle your opponent's deck a lot of the time, so I really like playing that in the main deck. But let's get on into the extra. So for our extra deck here, we are playing 2 copies of our Mutant Ultimus. So Ultimus is really great. You could drop this down to 1 if you wanted to, because you're generally not going into this too much. You're mainly going into your Synthesis, but I do like playing that second copy just as an extra option. So with this, you need 3 level 8 mutant monsters for its summon, so keep that in mind that that's very specific with your boss monsters. And then when a card or effect is activated as a quick effect, you can banish 1 mutant card from your hand, graveyard, or face up on the field of the same type as monster, spell, or trap in order to negate the activation, and then banish that card, which is really amazing. This is basically like an invoked Mechaba for the deck, which is really cool. I'm really into invoked Dogmatica, and you can actually blend Dogmatica in with the mutants, and it works pretty darn well, or even mix up invoked with mutants, which is really, really cool. So yeah, overall, just like treating this a little bit like an invoked Mechaba is really nice. The really great thing is that your cost for banishing your own card, as a mutant card, can be in your graveyard, which is really, really great that you're not having to discard or something to negate, which is what you have to do with Mechaba. And then also, when this fusion summon card is destroyed by an opponent's card, then you can add up to 3 of your banished mutant cards as a monster, spell, or trap. 1 of each from your banished pile up to your hand, which is really amazing, just to get some extra advantage, especially if it seems like your opponent is taking over the board. So you get 1 really solid negate off of this per turn, and then also if this card gets destroyed, then you get some resources back, which is really, really great. Then we're going to go on into our 3 copies of Mutant Synthesis. This is such a great card. So when this is fusion summoned, you get to pop 1 card on your opponent's side of the field. And then also once per turn, when your opponent activates an effect as a quick effect, you can use this effect of Mutant Synthesis to make this card unaffected by cards of the same type, monster, spells, or traps. So that's what I really like about the theme of this deck. Again, basically it's sort of like this is your perfect creature that eventually evolves into Ultimus, which can negate a bunch of stuff, but your Synthesis can make itself unaffected by a certain card type per turn. So if your opponent is basically running a Dragon Link combo deck, you can just declare monster effects, and then this card is going to be completely unaffected by all monster effects for the rest of the turn, which is really, really amazing. Also, it just has 2,500 attack, and your Ultimus has 3,500 attack, which is really great. They are big, big boss monsters. And then also, when this card is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can add back 1 of your banished mutant cards to your hand. So, yeah, with your Ultimus, you get 3, and with your Synthesis, you get 1. So they are really nice for just getting back all of your resources. Then just so for our 2 copies of Dogmatica Punishment, we're playing our 2 copies of Elder Entity Natis. And then also, if we end up going up against a Dogmatica deck, we want to have our Nova and Mechaba, because our extra deck doesn't matter too much for this deck, and these cards are overall still pretty budget. Then we're going to go on into our 1 copy of Cross Sheep, because we're playing Fusions, which is pretty nice. our 1 copy of IP Masquerena, and then the standard Nightmare package that is actually very budget now because of the reprints in Genesis Impact. And then for our final card, we're going to go with 1 copy of Topologic Zeroboros because he deals a lot with banishing stuff, so gains a lot of attack for every card that is banished. If you guys are looking to sort of spice up the deck, you could take out Nightmare Cerberus and then fit in a Predaplant Verde Anaconda, which is going to push the budget just a little bit, but overall, like I said, this is a very cheap deck, so you could put in the Anaconda, and then again, if you can find space in the main deck, your Emergency Teleport is going to do wonders for this deck because it just is another way to get your starters out of the deck, your Mutant, MO5 and the ST46. So overall, Emergency Teleport is really great for that. But anyways, guys, that is going to do it for my deck profile. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Yeah, Mutants is really cool. It is a TCG exclusive archetype as of now. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more support. I would really appreciate that in the future because, yeah, this deck has a lot of potential. We'll sort of see where it goes from here. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video as always. Check out the Patreon in the description if you guys are feeling it. Otherwise, I'll just see you guys in the next video. Peace.